So really, I mean, in this, just on those 4 chairs, we have the people that technically oversee every aspect of our magazine media industry. And as I've mentioned before, and until I stand corrected, that this is the first time ever the 4 of them are on the same panel at the same location, at the same place. And I'm going to start with a very simple question to all of you. And I know we've heard all your different presentations, but if you can briefly give me either the elevator pitch or what do you think is the status of magazine media as you see it from your own organization today? Linda?
Completely a piece of cake. No, I mean, look, it's funny when I came to the MPA, this has been 3 years already, and people would say to me, you know, why, Linda, why the magazine business? The magazine business is being so disrupted. And I would say, let me review my career for you, right? I've been a marketer in a tech company where literally we would work on tech for 9 or 12 months and it would get reverse engineered overnight. So like, you want to talk about disrupted? That was pretty disruptive. I worked in the automotive business, specifically in the domestic automotive business, pretty disrupted. And I spent time in the ad agency business. So every business that I can think of is being disrupted, and we're not unique or special in that. Like, the magazine media business is hard. So is every business that I can think of. Somehow I think we have thought we were special in a good way or a bad way, like, oh, poor us. I think the industry went through a lot of years where it's like, oh, we're really being disrupted, poor us. Well, okay, you're still alive and you're here, but you're being disrupted. The other thing I hear a lot from our industry is people keep saying, like, is this the answer? Is this the answer? And there is no answer, right? There are lots of answers. There are lots of incremental ways that we can help our business. I've said many times there's no silver bullet. Somebody just said to me the other day, I heard this phrase, which I'd never heard before, maybe, Linda, you're looking for silver buckshot. So I guess that's a great analogy, which is, right? So we just have to keep incrementally figuring out how to do this. But for me, when I talk about the state of the business, this is a business worth fighting for. So we're just going to keep doing it and keep finding ways to improve it. And, you know, and things that don't work, let's get rid of those really quickly so that we can get on with the stuff that does have potential.
Excellent. Mike?
So in B2B, similar to Linda's point, I think it's an opportunity worth fighting for. I like to characterize it, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. It's a great time. Technology has given us a much more sophisticated toolbox, a great way to connect with our audiences. I talked earlier in the panel about how we can look at a unified database of our audience and we can create personas and deliver targeted, really specific content in the B2B world to make companies and individuals smarter, faster, more competitive. So I think it's a great time to continue to deliver value to the B2B market community. The challenge is there's so much content, there's so much information, there's information fatigue, there's information overload, and there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that is a real challenge. That is a real challenge. So I think it's incumbent on us individually and collectively to make sure we fight for the quality, the value, because that will educate and inform and move not only our industry forward, but individuals and businesses. So I think it is, you know, it's a balancing act and it's a fight that we have to continue to be prepared for.
Jerry, from your point?
Yeah, so from a newsstand perspective, picking up on Linda's comments before, in my prior career, I had responsibility for video rental, gone, and the photo department, also gone, completely gone. I had responsibility for magazines as well. They're still here. So I think and again, to the other points that they're worth fighting for. I would say the state of the industry in the newsstand side of it is conflicted. You can kind of follow up in the conversation that just preceded us. It's conflicted in trying to find its way, I think, on the S-curve that James highlighted earlier. You know, how are we going to come out and what are the changes that are going to impact the newsstand business? I fully expect that we are going to be there, but it's definitely very, very, very different. I think to Linda's comments, some of the things that we're doing inside newsstand aren't necessarily working. And so I think we're at the bottom of the S. We're trying to figure out how we're going to come out on top. But I think as long as we have great product, we really do have great product, we got great consumers, that's two elements that you really need to have. And I think we have those in spades, so.
Okay, James?
Yeah, I would endorse everything that everybody has said. I think it does have its challenges. I mean, from a global perspective, the sentiment is very positive. I think most of the pain has been taken. Most of the companies that are going to go out of business have gone out of business, or the brands that have gone out of business. We do say to people, this is the most exciting time to work in the industry, and I do think that. I mean, if you kind of go back 25 years and you were in this business, what were your choices? You could be a journalist, which meant writing for one medium in print. You could be a marketeer or an ad salesperson that's pretty much it, circulation person. Now you have this enormous diversity of opportunity in a media business where you can take advantage of all of these new mediums that have come along and new ways for us to get our content across to consumers. And that's got to be exciting, right? Yes, it was painful, but Linda's right, everything's painful. This is life. It's hard, right? If you don't like it, do something else. The other thing we used to say to people all the time is, you want to remember when you work in media, is that most people would kill to have a job in media. They would kill to have a job. I used to work in a bank. Christ, I mean, if you want a dull job, that's a dull job. So just remember that this is a really exciting business, and I think it's never been more exciting than it is now. I think also it's important from a global point of view to think about the different markets that there are and not be kind of blinded by the not narrow focus, because it's a very important set of markets, but by the experience of the Western markets in the US and UK and Germany, where we've had this period of doom and gloom and toughness and da-da-da. There are a number of markets around the world where that's just kind of like, so what? And they're just getting on with things. I mean, we're next year going to take FIPP events to Nigeria and to Vietnam, which are two tier 2, tier 3 markets where there's an enormous growth in the middle class and therefore in purchasing power, and that's being accompanied by a big growth in media. And we have to take advantage of those markets that are out there. So I do think it's a very exciting time to work in this industry, and we've got such a great opportunity with all of these different ways that we can tell our stories.
Well, talking about exciting times, all of you have come to your jobs in this digital age, 6 years or less. What were you thinking? Were you like envisioning any challenges, or it's just a rose garden walk, or were you out of your mind when you were offered the job and said, yes, I'll take that? Linda?
Guess it depends who you ask. There are certainly days where some of my publisher members and maybe my team would say I was out of my mind. I've said this to people before. When I actually got the call about the MPA job, I kind of couldn't figure out why they were calling me. Like, I've never been a publisher, I've never run a trade association, and I was mostly or fully digital as long as there was digital media. So I think it was an interesting time. I think they were looking for a different skill set. And for me, it was an incredible synthesis of all the things that I had done and all the things that I like to do. And, in the ad agency business, where as a marketer, I had fantastic teams. We had really good results, but we would work really, really, really hard for a whole year. And at the end of the year, we would meet with our boss or our client, and they would say, you guys, you killed it. You hit all the KPIs. We had 0.02% market share. And I would go, wait, I just never went home and never had dinner with my family and was on a plane, 188 times to get 0.02% market share. I had great experience in that. I had great experiences in that world, but for me, the chance to put my feet on the floor every morning or get off a late night flight and say, we're doing things that really matter, not only to the industry and to our member companies, but out in the world. I'm not kidding when I say this. I don't want to live in a world where all media is crowdsourced. I don't think that's a good society. I don't want my kids growing up in that world. So I mean, why did I sign up for this gig, which is pretty hard on a lot of days? Because this stuff really, really matters. And it feels good to fight for something that is that important and that meaningful. So that's why.
Excellent. Mike?
So as I said in the earlier panel, my career has really been fortunate because I've worked as a provider in an auditing firm for the magazine industry, the B2B magazine industry. I ran a media company. I bought and sold media companies, working in investment banking as part of my career. So I really had the opportunity when I started 6 years ago at what was American Business Media, now Connectiv, I had the opportunity to fold into my persona leading this organization and leading the industry, the benefits of the wins, the losses, the opportunities, the challenges, but believing that we had a commitment and a responsibility and an obligation to serve this industry as the industry association. So yeah, I mean, as we all said, every job is hard, every day is a different day, but I just felt that it was at that point in my career where I wanted to plant my flag. So it's been an interesting ride the last 6 years, and I'm sure whatever the future is will continue to be a rocky ride. But you put your seatbelt on and you go forward.
I actually came in a little longer than 6, probably more closer to 10. And I think what sold me on this really, I had the opportunity in my prior career. Again, I worked for a grocery chain upstate New York. And I got to, books and magazines were a category that I had overall responsibility for. So we got to go on this tour. I actually got to take the president of the company on a tour of a publisher. You know, went with Time, basically went on a tour of their offices, went to a photo shoot, actually went down to a printing plant and saw the magazines coming off the line. And the energy around that, you know, it was just a great category. We already liked it. You know, we already liked the magazine business. It was pretty healthy, and we were doing a lot of sales, and it was very profitable for us. But when you got in sync with what the product was, you got that close, and you got to talk to the people that were creating it and how passionate they were. It's kind of infectious, you know. But even through into the bindery, even to the printing side, it was a infectious business. So when this opportunity came to work for the trade association, kind of looking at this on the newsstand business, you just couldn't turn away because of the passion. And that's kind of what, you know, brought me into the business. It's just kind of exciting stuff. And when you connect the consumer side of that, or that passion of the magazine, to the retail side that I came out of, which was very passionate about their customers, it seemed like, you know, this is a no-brainer. This is gonna be a ton of fun. Now, my hair wasn't gray when I started. So the fun side's been a bit more difficult, but you know, it's a great business. I think, to echo the prior comments, it's changing. It's just so exciting. Sometimes it's frustrating as hell, but you know, you try to find those positive sides and figure out what you can leverage. But that's what I think, you know, gets you energized. You want to make sure you concentrate on those things, concentrate on the passion, not the frustration. Concentrate on the passion, take another swing at the piñata, you know, keep going after that, because there's so many things that you can do, the opportunity, the upside. It's just fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say 3 things. The first is that the digital aspect of this transformation is not something for me that I find particularly scary, because in my career it's always been there. I mean, I entered the workforce in 97, I'm 44 years old, so you know, the internet has always been there in my career. It's not something that's new and different for me, and relatively comfortable with that aspect of it. I would say 2 other things though. The first is that you only really get offered 2 kinds of jobs, right? You get offered growth and you get offered turnaround. Because if somebody's running something successful, they're not going to give that up. And if they are, you probably don't want to take that job, because how can you do it better than them? Imagine somebody comes and says, do you want to be the head of Marvel Entertainment? You'd say no, right? How can you do that better than how they're doing it now? So I think you have to view any career opportunity through that lens, and this was certainly a combination of those 2 things. It's a great growth opportunity in this fantastic market we're in, and it's a turnaround, because we're a trade association, and all trade associations are in turnaround, whether they admit it or not. And I guess the third thing is, you know, if you think about the prospect of this opportunity, it was a chance to promote the values of the industry, all the stuff that Linda was talking about, all the stuff that's really important. For us, we take a slightly different view. We're about doing business rather than editorial. how can we help this industry do more business with each other? How can we help this industry that is about communication, but is actually really shit at communicating with each other, talk to each other? You know, who would have thought 20 years ago that we could get Condé Nast and Hearst to sit in a room and talk to each other? They wouldn't. Now they do, because they have to, because they're insignificant compared to Google and Facebook. So all of those opportunities that are there are really exciting. And of course, I'm not 100% altruistic. I have a board of 40 CEOs of the media industry. I still need to work for another 25 years before I can retire, so this is a great way to get a job afterwards as well.
So James, tell me, what's the biggest challenge you think the magazine media industry is facing? And I want you to think about it like on a good day and on a bad day.
It's a really easy answer. Vocabulary is the biggest problem this industry faces. 25 years ago, again, it was really easy to describe what we did. We were a magazine industry. Now it's really hard to describe what we do. We have it when we think about how we should describe ourselves as a trade association. We call ourselves the Network for Global Media. The word magazines doesn't come into it because our members don't think of themselves as magazine companies, even though they secretly are. They like to think of themselves as brand-based, multi-platform media businesses, whatever. Well, that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. So I think there's an identity, not crisis, but there's an identity element to us being a little bit more comfortable and confident about how we describe ourselves as an industry. And that, I found the biggest struggle. Because if you say magazines, especially if you're a trade association, oh, you're living in the past, da-da-da-da-da. Well, yeah, okay, we're not, guys, because that's how you make all your money still, even though you don't want to admit it. But if you just say, oh, well, we're only about new stuff, then they go, well, you've forgotten your legacy. Well, it's like, okay, well, what do you want? You know, we've got to balance the two things together. So that question of vocabulary, how we describe ourselves as an industry and how we reflect that in the trade association, that's the biggest issue for us.
Okay. Jerry?
So I think, picking up on your communication side, from, again, looking at the newsstand business, I think we've got two pieces from my perspective. We've got publishing on one side and retailers on the other side. And neither party understands each other. The businesses are terribly confusing to the other recipient. You know, how we communicate that. I mean, we talked earlier about, sell-throughs are 20%. 20%, if you're in a retail world, you got to sell through at 20%, they're going to take you out back and shoot you. I mean, that is just deplorable. SBT, that came around basically, so we only pay for what we sell on the retail side, was kind of an answer to that. I mean, it basically took that off the table from a retailer's perspective. It would drive people crazy that we sold 20% of what we put in. They go, well, why the hell are you putting so much in? Well, we're going to take it all back, so it's not a problem. Guaranteed sale. Oh, that's okay. But the business was very, very confusing. And then turn around and say, okay, we're selling subscriptions for $1 for a year for something that I'm selling for $7 at your newsstand. Again, the retailer's going, I don't get it. So all these things are very difficult to bring these two parties together. Now, from a publishing side, they don't get retail. I mean, look you're making 40% on this magazine. Why the heck are you putting it in the back or burying it someplace? It's a magazine about food. Why aren't you pushing it? There's this big, big disconnect, and trying to figure out how to pull those two parties together around the common consumer, which is where the opportunity is, remains a constant challenge. I always worry that while we're trying to figure this out, is that retailers are kind of removing themselves. I think Drew said that we've lost all this space on the front end. Some of that's because retailers have just lost, from my perspective, just kind of lost faith. I mean, sales go down, so it's a natural reaction to kind of reduce the space. But they're never going to reduce the space. They don't make any money on Hellmann's mayonnaise. They make zero. They lose money on Hellmann's mayonnaise. They are not going to reduce the space. It is going to be there come hell or high water. I think the challenge, the opportunity is to get our product viewed, the same way, our product and that relationship that we have with the consumer, which is so valuable. How do we bring that up in the retailer's mind? And then at the same time, look at those consumers that are shopping in the store, in a retail, and bring that up in the publisher's mind as an opportunity. I mean, it's a really difficult thing to do, but a huge opportunity, I think.
And Mike, in the B2B business, I mean, what's your biggest challenge on a good day and your biggest challenge on a bad day?
I see on a regular basis, on a daily basis, our media company members from the CEO to every level of the organization make a really tremendous commitment to quality content, whether it's print or digital, making sure that their events are really first class, investing in data and technology. So the commitment is there, and I see it on a regular basis. The challenge and the frustration clearly is making sure that the marketer and the advertising agency that really have to make buying decisions recognize the value proposition, the value of the data, the value of the information, the value of the content, that their message will really be captured and seen by an audience that has a buying influence, has a need for that product in an environment, an advertising and marketing environment that has a lot of clutter in it. So that is a frustration. I see it, and sort of our job is to advance that cause as well. And that is probably, you make the investment, you make the commitment, and then looking for that ROI is a challenge, and I think will continue to be.
Linda?
I think the single thing that is both holds the most potential in my mind and the most frustration is data. And what people forget is that data does not equal truth, right? And especially if you have a single piece of data. So you need a lot of information, and you need the perspective and the understanding of the business fundamentals to decide which pieces of data to look at, right? You can lead yourself to a lot of incomplete or misleading or plain bad business decisions looking at individual pieces of data. And I see that happening all the time. I see it with ad agencies who are like, well, we're just optimizing, right? Or the phrase that makes me completely lose my mind, well, it's just the algorithm. All right, well, algorithms did not get handed down from the mountain, carved into a stone tablet, right? Algorithms were written by people. So they inherently have the biases or the limitations or the misunderstandings of the people who wrote them. So they're a great starting point, and they can get better over time, and it's inherent on all of us to use the data and those algorithms in the right way, but not just our industry, but the business world sort of writ large has really misused that or hid behind that, right? And I hear that all the time. Well, Linda, it's not our decision, it's just the data. No, it's completely your decision that's why you're using those individual pieces of data, and you better understand the business that goes into that. And as a corollary, I would say to the students, understanding data bias, data perspective, the best ways to use it is going to be hugely important to you. And it's distressing to me how often I have students or people young in their careers, and I'll say to them, like, why are you interested in journalism or communications? And one of the first things they say to me all the time is, well, I've always hated math. Okay? Now, first of all, I don't have the luxury of saying that because I'm married to a mathematician, so I don't get to say I hate math, okay? And by the way, when I was in school, I felt kind of the same way that you did. But please strike that phrase from your vocabulary. If we have a big stack of resumes and we're trying to screen them and you tell me you hate math, you just made my life easier because your resume is gone. Because even if you don't like it, you have to understand it, and you have to be able to work with the business fundamentals. And unfortunately, business fundamentals are math, right? So you can tell your friends you don't like it, you can tell your mom you don't like it, but don't ever say it in an interview situation, because you're dead to me then.
Excellent. Anybody would like to comment on Linda's comment regarding data? Because one of the things that we've heard during the conference, data, legacy, and passion. How can you put those three together? I mean, is there a magic formula or a magic sauce that you can combine data, passion, and legacy? James?
I do think you have to be careful with data. Linda is absolutely right. I read a good book recently called The AI Delusion, which was a guy writing about how we all think AI is going to change the world, and it's not. And his basic point was that, computers are very good at picking out correlations in data, but not very good at understanding what those correlations actually are. So the example he used was, I think, the temperature of a town in Alaska versus the likelihood that a Republican or a Democrat would win the presidential election. And there was a correlation, if it was hot, then it was Democrat, and whatever. And he said the computer's going to go, this is a revelation, and the human's going to go, that's just nonsense. Of course there's no correlation. So you've got to have that combination, and Linda is absolutely right about math. You've got to have that combination of being able to understand the data and use your common sense to evaluate it. And the other point on that is that, I was raised professionally by the BBC, and one of the things that skills and disciplines that they taught us is the P&L and the balance sheet and the cash flow is everything. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to be able to run anything. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand maths, you're not going to be able to understand that. So, you to this day, when publishers come to us and talk to us about things, young publishers, I say to them, the first thing you need to know is you need to know every single number on your P&L, and you need to understand what's behind it. And if you don't do that, it doesn't matter how creative you are, you're not going to get anywhere. So I would absolutely endorse what Linda said.
Mike?
I think, and I'm in agreement with both the points, data information is just a set of information points. You need strong analysis and strong analytical skills and knowledge of the market or markets that you're looking at to really come to some important conclusion. So in and of itself it's not actionable. It doesn't sort of add the value. It doesn't answer the question. So I think to your point about legacy and passion, you can certainly be an advocate for the data or the data collection, but the proper collection, first of all, so it has to be collected properly.
Exactly.
You have to start with that premise, because if you don't, then it's flawed even before you get to the analysis. But you can have that passion, but you have to make sure that it's properly collected. And then the legacy is, John French talked about it not being, don't look at it as a negative. It's the sum of the parts. Take all of the inputs, all of the interpretations you need to then create this new value or this new opportunity. So I think tying those together is critically important.
And I do think we have to be careful about, as we collect all this data, I think where the consumers' heads are going to be as their data hits and they start seeing the effects of their data collection, the privacy side of that. I'm really curious to see, where all that ends up. We have to treat that with great respect, and a lot of the people that are collecting data are competitors. So, it's his data and that data and this data, and they're all kind of coming together. And how that hits the consumer, and if my echo, asks me how I'm feeling today, I'm going to be a little bit, worried about that. So, how far do we take this? I think we have to be sensitive to that. We should always be sensitive to the consumer, in this equation that we have. And to Linda's earlier point on knowing your math, absolutely. I can't tell you. I was lousy at math, absolutely lousy. But I use it every single day, and you will find it absolutely invaluable. Just in regular conversation, I think, business conversation for sure, but you need to have it. My wife's a math teacher, and she can run circles around me. But I use it, and she straightens me out when I'm wrong, but it's extremely valuable. So I would encourage you that if you haven't taken a business math course, take it. You will be very, very happy that you've done so.
I just want to pick up on that point about data and privacy. I think it's interesting. You have this incredible situation at the moment where there's this enormous asymmetry between the three players in privacy and data. Legislators who don't really understand it, tech companies who understand it all too well, and the consumer who's kind of somewhere between the two. It seems to me that there's this enormous disconnect between those three groups, and that at some point that's going to be corrected.
Yes.
And I think I didn't pick up very much on that today in my presentation, but I think that's something to watch out for, because the flip side of all of this is I don't think the consumer has any idea how much data is being collected about them or what it's being used for. And I think when they discover that, there's going to be, literally blood on the streets.
Yes, it's amazing to me. I get an ad for something that I bought 6 months ago, and it keeps coming and coming. The one thing I like about magazines is I can flip through those and then totally ignore ads that I don't want. I find magazines to be totally unintrusive that way. I absolutely love it. I turn on my computer, I'm like, damn.
Well, I love those examples because I get them all the time. My staff is tired of hearing me give my examples, but I bought some kitchen stools for my house, and that's not something you buy a lot, right? You buy them, hopefully they're going to last a really long time. And I bought them right after the holidays, and what is it now, April, almost May, and I'm still getting served. And by the way, I bought them online, so I shopped for them online. I did the purchase online, so in theory it should have been very easy to track, but I'm still getting serve
Offers.
lots of ads and offers and direct email. So look, I used to be on the agency side. I know what all that costs. So it's great. I just add it up, and then when I go talk to that marketer and they say, oh, our direct marketing, our data-driven marketing, our online marketing is so efficient. And I was like, really? Let's talk about that. Here's what I spent. Here's probably the margin, right, on 4 kitchen stools. It wasn't that much. Here's how much you've spent in the intervening 4 months, right? So do that math times all the people out there, right? Because everybody has these stories. So it's great to actually count it up and look at the impact of that. And it's funny because one of the marketers said to me, well, Linda, you know tech, you know how to fix this, just clear your cookies. I was like, yeah, but then I can't come in and show you how dumb you are. I clear my cookies.
Yeah. Have you done the mattresses test with the phone? I don't know whether this is apocryphal. It certainly works whenever I do, which is you put your phone on the table with a bunch of friends and just talk about mattresses for an hour.
Yeah.
And see what happens when you turn your phone back on.
Yeah.
And you start getting served ads for mattresses. Now, they say it's not listening to you, but something's happening there, right?
It's magic.
It's magic, yeah. It's incredible intuition about your intention, even though I have no intention of buying a mattress.
Right.
So I think that aspect of it is something that consumers instinctively are understanding, but they're not quite understanding. They're just like, oh, it's your word. They're just like, oh, that's a bit intrusive, rather than this is creepily terrifying. And I think that's where they're getting to, is the creepily terrifying.
Well, and it hurts the product when you get all done. That kind of thing actually hurts the content that we're trying to sell, because I'm not going to look at it because just turn it off. I can't take it.
Yeah. I mean, the analogy from a marketing standpoint is, I mean, if you think about what that does to you as a person, is it sort of like in your mattress example, if you were just sitting in a bar and the mattress salesperson from the store across the street came over to the bar and was like, hey,
Right.
are you,
I heard you. I heard you from across the street.
I mean, that's what it's doing, right? And you're just like, no, I'm just here to hang out with my friends, right?
I'm curious if it's a demographic age sort of sophistication or knowledge. Like, is sort of the students more aware of that? Are you more aware of that? More akin to that? Where this group may not be, and be curious how audience behavior is changing by.
But that's a really good point, right? Which is, but I think the problem there is that just because it's something that they've always known, it doesn't mean that it's right.
Right.
And I think that's the big issue, is that it becomes so pervasive and normal that people forget it wasn't like that.
Or is there a sensitivity to saying, I know what you're doing?
Yeah,
I know what you're doing, and I don't like it.
Right.
And I don't like it. So it's turning me off from a marketing strategy that may not. The assumption that everyone doesn't really understand this, or it's taking time to catch up, may not be exclusively
James,
across all.
You probably have more exposure to this than I do, but it's in China where they're capturing the social
score. Yeah,
social score, right?
Social score.
So
your fitness as a citizen. Yeah.
Right. So now the government's going to say whether you're a good person or not, right? Based on all these.
But it's more than that. It's what they do as a consequence. I mean, the social score is, if you go to a city in China now, every intersection has cameras on it, and they take pictures of you everywhere you go. If you run a red light or you speed, your social score goes down. If you're, blah blah blah. But if your social score falls below a certain level, you're not allowed to book train tickets. You're not allowed to fly. You're not allowed to buy certain things. And they're basically restricting your ability to be a normal human being.
Right.
Based on their perception of how you interact with their society. Now, it's not a short step from that to, I'm terribly sorry you can't get credit in America or in the UK because we've looked at your background and decided that you're not a particularly reliable human being.
Right.
And I think that's the divide we're coming to, where there's all these little instances at the moment of this stuff happening. The one the other day about, these Google-enabled front door cameras where you can see somebody's there even if you're not at home. Well, it was announced Google are watching that as well and capturing who comes to your house. It's like, well, I didn't agree to that. Yes, you did. You ticked the stupid terms and conditions.
Disclaimer.
Right.
And this is where that asymmetry is coming from. The tech industry goes, oh, well, we put it in the T&Cs. It's fine. It's like nobody reads them, and nobody reads them. So you're not, able to
and
wash
you
your
can't
hands
opt
of
out.
that.
Even if you read them, you can't opt out, right? Because
You
then you can't use the
just send
technology.
it back. You can send the product back.
Well, you can send the product back, right? But you can't use
You're
the
not
product
probably
with
not.
any
You're probably
other-
not going to.
Right.
So we know the problem. My question to you, what are we doing to combat that problem in the magazine media industry?
Well, Go on,
Yeah.
Linda.
I mean, a big part of, I mean, the MPA has sort of multiple prongs, right? We work with members to help collect data and share data and be, a smarter industry overall. We spend time with advertisers and marketers. We did well over 100 presentations last year to try to do that. But we also spend time in DC. So, I mean, literally on Monday before I flew here, I was with the head of the Judiciary Committee, and we were talking about monopolistic practices and data privacy. So, I mean, that's a big part. And, and there are many industry bodies who are working on privacy from different standpoints. But I think that's one that's going to take, everybody in the industry trying to establish some new rules and trying to help our government even understand what's going on, because they're not living in the same media centric world that we are, and they're all smart people and they understand, a judicial precedent, et cetera, but they don't necessarily understand the technology or the way that we're using the data. So showing them that that our member companies have long-term relationships with consumers and have a background of protecting that data privacy as opposed to some of what's going on out there is really important. But we spend enormous amounts of time down in DC talking about that.
I think we're in a pivotal, in the US particularly, we're in a pivotal point. Right now, California is looking seriously at their privacy laws, and I think that could be a telltale sign for what might happen on a national agenda. I mean, we have GDPR in the EU, and California, with a very strong consumer rights bias, could really have an impact on the national agenda.
And Vermont and Oregon now. I think there's like 8 different states that are all that are all doing this.
And while it might have gotten keyed off of digital phenomena or online purchases, I mean, this has been going on for years. So think about a frequent shopper card and the data that goes with that. All of that information is out there, and it's kind of key to some of these businesses.
Right.
So making sure that we don't kill it off, because it is necessary for proper function for a lot of these businesses. So getting in early and trying to help craft the right solution is going to be important. But consumers are going to drive this. I mean, it won't take much.
No, it won't take much.
I think the other indication that I see is from the media companies, the CEOs need to understand how impactful this is and how important it is. I know in some of the conversations that I've had prior to the EU decision on May 25th, it was, we know it's there, but it's not high priority. Well, it is a high priority, and it will have P&L impact on your business. So that was a call to action, the GDPR announcement, but it really needs to be an important part of the strategic view of every media company's CEO and their teams.
And I do think it's interesting that, and the great work the MPA has been doing with lobbying, I think it's interesting that the EU and the US, which are the 2 drivers in this, are starting to head in the same direction. And if you look at the 2 big direction of travel things they have, the first one is privacy and having some kind of unified sense of privacy. And the second one is breaking up monopolies. I mean, that somebody said to me the other day, it was maybe somebody in Germany, said, Facebook will be broken up. It will be. I mean, it's just, they just don't know it yet, because that's what the EU are going to do, and then basically the US will follow that, or the other way around. So that work that the industry, and that only happens because we speak as a unified voice, The national associations play a big role in that. There's a body in Europe called EMA, which does the same thing for the magazine media industry in the EU. And it's because we all sing from the same hymn sheet. Facebook is evil, needs to be broken up. Consumers need to have their privacy protected.
Right.
It's consistency of messaging is really important, and I think that's one of the roles that we have to play.
Right.
And how do we, in my interviews that I do with the magazine media, who's who, sort of, they're always capture one word. Like this year it's the data. Last year it was voice. The year before it was video. How do you promote this message that we are a wholesome magazine media? It's not just like this or that. As a lobbying organization that cares about the industry.
What you mean? How do we make sure that we have a consistency of message?
Yeah, that it's not every year we just pick one item and this is what, like this year it's voice. Last year it was data. The year before it was video.
I think you have to split the technology and consumer trend side, which is hype, Snapchat, voice, whatever, we'll see whether that lasts, from the really serious, important part about legislation and lobbying. And I think that's being driven by the industry. I mean, it's not Linda and I and others standing up and saying this is important. This is what the industry believes is important.
Well, I think the MPA has done a good job of trying to lead with that consumer. Start with them. This is what we're trying to serve here, is our reader. And then everything kind of follows beyond that. This we should be doing this as a result of trying to, because without them, we've got nothing. So the consumer is the central piece of everything that we do, helps us get over some of that hump that we have to climb. It's not easy, but I think that's the only way you can do it.
I wish I only had one thing to worry about. Like, free up a lot of time in my day. I could read more magazines.
Yeah.
I think if you want to say this is the year of whatever, I would say it's a year of quality. And quality plays out in a lot of different ways, right? It plays out in editorial and showcasing how the editorial that our brands create is different from a lot of other stuff out there. It plays out in terms of our business, the quality of our business, and making sure that in a multi-platform way, we've put all the pieces together in a right way. And by the way, what's right is different for every media company. What's right for Meredith is very, very different than what's right for a single title publisher. And then I think quality applies to, from the legislative and privacy standpoint too, how we think about the use of data, the protection of data, and what we do with that data, and not just throwing consumer, data points at every single question that comes up, but really thinking about those quality of interactions and the quality of the relationship that I have with you.
I think also, right now we're in a really serious moment as far as responding sort of to the signs of the times. And what I mean by that is whether it's media, magazine media, consumer, B2B, cable, broadcast, newspapers, the whole idea of quality, of fake news, of telling the right story, truth matters. Right. I think that is an important acknowledgement of all media and our sort of obligation and social responsibility to be focused on that. And I think that is something that probably will not just be a subject of the week or a subject of choice. I think we have learned how impactful, how dangerous not enforcing and embracing that can be, not only to our industry, but to our society. So I think that is something that we'll continue to see.
Well said.
And as a reminder, Stephen Orr in his opening night presentation, he mentioned that if quality becomes something from the past, we're doomed.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely right.
One of the agencies we've been doing a lot of work with in New York is called Media Kitchen. I don't know if you guys know them. Barry Lowenthal, who's the media director there, a super thoughtful guy, and we've been working with him. He's been using this phrase, which I love, which is badge media, right? Which is consumers sort of attaching themselves to the media brand and using that as a badge of their identity, right? So if you're a reader of The Economist, even without knowing you, I can probably make some assumptions about, what you do for a living or the approach you have to life, right? I actually was talking to our friends at The Economist about this, and I told them they should start a dating service because those would actually be highly, highly valuable dates if you're a subscriber to The Economist. It comes up all the time with The New Yorker. Right? That if you're in the subway in New York and you see somebody reading The New Yorker or somebody with a New Yorker tote bag, in this sort of divisive political environment we're in, it's almost like I feel like we're in Hunger Games. Like I see the little Mockingjay pin, like you're a sign of the resistance, right? If you have the New Yorker tote bag, I'm like, I got you, right? On the subway. So I think that consumers' identity with these specific media brands is really becoming a thing in this very cluttered media environment where they're sort of attaching themselves to that.
Well, before I ask you my typical two final questions, what is the question that I should ask you that I did not? Feel free to ask it and answer it.
Why does the industry still need trade associations?
Okay, why does the industry still need trade
one that we get
associations?
quite a lot. Again, because I think the answer would be because we are an industry. We're a very creative industry, we're a very dynamic industry, so that sometimes means that we don't think of ourselves as an industry in the same way that steel or cars do. But now more than ever, there are issues that are affecting, as was quite rightly said, society, not just our industry, that we have an opportunity to take a lead on. And trade associations are the natural way for that to happen. They're not, they're not anymore cozy golf clubs like they used to be years ago. They're now focused on delivering stuff that really matters, and I think that's crucial.
Okay, Jerry?
The industry's, one of the industry's strengths has always been its diversity, but I think at the same time we're so super competitive at a publishing level is that it's very difficult to get focused around what are core benefits, around the category. So when you think about, again, I'm thinking retail here, trying to figure out how the industry should handle these things that are common, non-differentiated tasks. That's where I think we can add a lot, and also try to create that one voice, that one kind of consistent message of the value and of the categories is it's very difficult to do when it's out being done amongst all these players. It's absolutely amazing when you think about this category. And again, I'm going back to a retail store. There's nothing that compares in terms of the number of manufacturers of product that are made and are on display in a supermarket. There's no category that can touch it. It's just, there's just so many players. It's good because all of these different interests and points of view come to the table and they kind of surface there. But it gives us some challenges, which I think was where we come to play.
But no category that they treat us badly.
Probably true. I can think of a couple, but yeah, that's
Pretty close.
Yeah, pretty
Up
damn
there
close.
with tobacco.
Well, yeah, that's
Right.
pretty bad. But there's nothing has this scale of people that are involved. It's a tough business to get your arms around. It really is.
Mike?
So it's more of a curiosity / question. This is my first time at Act 9. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a great experience being here on campus, meeting the students, meeting other colleagues. I'd be curious, when you started this 9 years ago and you say, okay, we're going to really do this 360 view of magazines, if you fast forward to today, is this sort of what you thought the environment would look like? And if you fast forward 10 years from now, what do we think the environment would look like?
Well, let's put it this way. We've come a long way. The first year I felt like I was like a fish swimming upstream. Now I think I'm like heading toward Niagara Falls.
Whoops.
I thought you were going to say you're in a lake, looking over the falls.
But in reality, when we started the Magazine Innovation Center 10 years ago and the ACTA experience, the goal was to amplify the future of print in a digital age. And everybody thought that I've lost it. Like I'm so in love with magazines and print that I can't see beyond that, although the tagline, amplifying the future of print in a digital age. But the climax of the ACT experience and the magazine innovation arrived last year when Linda actually stood on this podium and asked everybody, never again to use the word print is dead or print is not dead, because it's a rumor, it's fiction, it's not true. And that's where I felt vindicated that, what I've been doing, and again, with folks that are attending, with all these speakers, you can feel the sense of optimism. You can feel the sense of the passion, the legacy, and the data all combined together. Linda, what's the question that I should ask you? I did not.
I think the question is, with all the things that we've talked about that are sort of, the curves are going up, consumer, perception about the quality is going up, marketers, why aren't the business fundamentals changing faster? And I think we're getting there. I think there has been an inflection point. We're hearing, print, I shouldn't say print, magazine media across platform budgets coming back to our member companies. It's not changing as fast or as dramatically as we would like it, but we're seeing some good indicators, and I think that sort of makes me feel better. But I think we're all hoping that We're getting to the point where we can start to look at some big lifts in those numbers to say, all these things that we saw as leading indicators in trust and quality and marketer ROI all really sort of came home to roost in the budget allocation.
Excellent. Well, my final two typical questions. The first one is, what do you think is the biggest misconception about you? I mean, when people look at you or hear what you're doing or your work, what do you think is the biggest misconception?
You want me to go first? You spend all your life flying around the world, drinking champagne and going to events. Well, actually, that might be true. I think the biggest misconception is that, well, it's a really good question. I guess it's that people don't necessarily understand what we do as an organization. And we have to kind of talk to them about this combination of knowledge and networking that we think is important to growing people's businesses. And we kind of like to describe ourselves as a bit like a spider sitting at the center of a web. And the web stretches across the world, and there's all these little filaments that are tingling as things happen. And we're trying to make sure that we connect the right people at the end of the filaments with each other. I think people do think that a lot of what we do is, sitting in boring committee meetings talking about stuff that's not really important. Actually, the most important thing we do is connecting people with one another to share knowledge or to do business together. And I think that's maybe not that well understood.
Okay. Jerry?
I think I mentioned two of them. One is that I killed the industry when I joined it in 2007, and that my hair was always gray. No, at one point in time, but. I think similar to James, I think if you look at the industry in terms of what we're trying to do, it's difficult, I think, to get understood. It's a challenging environment, which kind of creates that misconception. And there's just so many players, it's a challenge to get out there. But I think we've touched on this already. I think that passion, finding people that have passion is critical, I think, for the students. You want to be with people that are passionate about what they do. That gets you over an awful lot of humps. And I think that's kind of important to anything that you do.
I think for me, it's that I don't work for a media company, first of all. But I think clearly the messages that have been echoed in the two speakers, it really is, it's a complicated environment, and trying to explain the value propositions and different levels, whether it's advocacy, whether it's education, whether it's networking, is an important message that we have to just continue delivering. But that's, I think, an important misconception about what we're focused on.
Linda?
Yeah, I think James actually said a minute ago, which is that, why do you need trade associations? And people sort of think of what we do as sort of soft, like a nice to have, but, maybe not a must have. And, at the MPA, we're funded by member dues. we get our funding from our member companies, and we take the stewardship of that money very, very seriously. And we, at the end of the year, well, multiple times during the year, but especially at the end of the year, we give them a very specific accounting. Here's what we've done. Here's the presentations we've done, the meetings we've done. We give our members, to the extent that we can, and we're transparent about the methodology, a hard ROI. So we say to them, you gave us X in dues, and here's the ROI you got back for that money. So we try to be very transparent and thorough and business-like in how we invest, and we do think of it as an investment of our members' money in, our staff time and effort and the things that we do for them.
Excellent. And it won't be a Mr. Magazine panel if I don't ask my typical last question. And hopefully one of you can beat Michael Cusack's from Different Leads answer from yesterday.
No way.
What keeps you up at night?
I'll answer last.
Not fair, Jane. Not fair. What was the answer yesterday? I wasn't here.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
Michael, what was your answer yesterday?
Nothing keeps me up because a 2.5 milligram edible.
I like that answer.
Yeah, I cannot top that. I'll go, but I actually will go with Donnie's answer, which is that nothing keeps me up because I am really tired at the end of the day and I'm still a good sleeper. But I'll change it. What gets me up in the morning, which is also not usually easy, is just the fact that the stuff matters, and I love getting up and thinking about it and having a lot of ideas and enthusiasm and sort of, ready to go fight the fight every day.
I think from my view, it's making sure that as an industry association, we maintain a relevancy, particularly in a changing market with changing audiences, changing leadership at organizations, making sure that the expectations are not just met but exceeded, because meeting expectations is game stakes, table stakes. So, continuing to drive relevancy, and then to Linda's point on ROI, because we do take seriously the dues as well. I mean, that is our main revenue stream, majority of our revenue stream. So making sure we deliver on ROI is, and making sure that ROI resonates with the different stakeholders, because every stakeholder has a little bit of a different perspective on what ROI means to him or her. So that's an important part of the overall delivery.
Yeah, ROI is hard to tap sometimes, it seems. Other than sleep apnea, let's see, what keeps me up at night would be, I would say more about what's the thing that I think about the most, right? And I'll find myself sometimes waking up and thinking about this. So again, back to newsstand, and that's where my focus has been. When you think about where the business is, I worry that as the publishing side of the business is going through so many changes, that retailers are going to walk away before we get it solved. And I don't mean walk away, but they lose interest in the presence of the category in retail loses a little bit, and it'll take a hard work to get it back. And we were omnipresent. We were everywhere inside supermarkets 15 years ago. I mean, everywhere. And that's certainly changed. I would say over the last 5 years, it's dramatically shifted. So, and some of that is, and from my point of view, is a mindset at retail. And that's what I think keeps me up, is how do we address that? How do we keep at that so that we keep those retailers interested as we climb the S-curve and come out of that?
I've thought of something. So on a personal level, what keeps me up every night is sleeping in a different bed, much like Linda's example. I did last year 151 nights away from home, which was pretty much 151 different beds. So that's they say you need 2 nights to get used to a new bed. So I'm always screwed because I'm only ever in them for 1 night. On a professional level, I wake up every night just telling myself not to take for granted the support that the industry gives for a trade association like ours, because if they all collectively decided they didn't want it anymore, there wouldn't be anything I could do about that. So it's really about just interrogating ourselves constantly to make sure that we're delivering them more value. And I'm kicking myself because Linda's idea of, or thing of writing to them every year and telling them what you've done is so brilliant and so simple that I wish I'd thought of that. So I'm going to start doing that now. So I'm going to steal that.
Have at it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much. I truly appreciate your time, your energy, your passion, your legacy. And thank you, everyone. Let's give them a hand.